Hey everyone, my name is Jacob Pearl and I am the founder and CEO of Blue Collar Hollar Incorporated. So basically today I thought I'd share kind of what is next for Blue Collar Hollar Incorporated. So the next thing that's happening at Blue Collar Hollar is I'm actually starting a podcast known as the Blue Collar Hollar Podcast. And basically, I just thought before I shared the first episode of that podcast, I thought I'd kind of explain kind of why I'm doing it and who I'm doing it for, and just kind of introduce it in some way. So basically, the reason why I'm starting it is because I feel that injured workers that are getting receiving help from WSIB aren't receiving the best quality of service. And being a business owner and seeing customers in some way not getting the support they need really frustrates me because I'm a big supporter of good customer service, and doing my very best for my customers. And yeah, so basically the reason why I'm starting it is basically to advocate for injured workers and allow them to come on this podcast and basically share their story, kind of what happened to them, how WSIB is treating them, and just basically just share their experience overall, and basically use us as a advocation tool, and also, yeah, that's basically it. The other part of it, there's three parts. That's one part. The second part is I just find it interesting myself. I like hearing stories. Obviously, I'm an injured worker myself, so just hearing it and hearing that people went through a similar experience than I did, or things like that. I find it interesting, so maybe other people find it interesting. Again, this is just a test. It might not work out and I only might get 10 viewers a week, and that's just the way it goes, but I'd rather give it a try, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I'd rather try it and fail than not try it and possibly miss a opportunity. And then the third reason I'm doing it is I think that when it comes to the mental health side of things, I think this could be therapeutic for both me and other injured workers to make sure that they feel that they're not alone, and because there are some, and actually quite a bit, that do feel alone in this conversation. So I just thought that I would do this and they can listen in and maybe feel a little bit better because they aren't alone. So that's kind of the reason why I'm doing it. I guess the other reason, part of the advocacy, is to educate both injured workers, non-injured workers, the public, that this is what's happening. And the way I look at it is that anyone can become an injured worker at the end of the day. Like, I didn't have that title until I got hurt at work, and it can happen when you least expect it. So, and I think the public deserves a better system, and it deserves to know, like, are these people actually being taken care of, or are they looked at as throwaways of the government? And there's definitely an argument and a debate there, but I'm taking the side of the workers, because those are the people that have put this country together and this province together, and without them, we would have nothing. We would have 2 feet, a heartbeat, and a flat piece of land, and, well, the world that we live in isn't that. So somebody had to create that, and I think that they need to feel supported and have someone kind of stand up for them. So that's the reason why I'm starting it. I guess another question would probably be, like, who is this for? And I kind of covered it, but it is for everyone. Like I said, it's for injured workers for therapeutic reasons and education. It's for non-injured workers that they're like, all right, so what happens? Like, what do I do when I get hurt at work? Like, what is the steps after that? So that's for that. The public, I think, needs to know, because they're kind of the non-injured workers in some way, and non-injured workers' family members as well. So, and I think they need to know that, is my cousin or my daughter or my brother or whatever you want to say, are they going to be supported on WSIB? Are they going to be taken care of? Are they going to feel like they have a support system? So that's a part of the education that I want, is to educate the public. And then the other two groups of people that I think could use this for good. I don't think they're going to, but they're going to look at it as criticism, in my opinion. But I think they could take it in a really good way and listen to me and possibly use it for good and improve the parts of the systems that, or the part of the system that isn't doing good, and take my ideas and improve the system for the future of injured workers, unfortunately, because there's always going to be injured workers no matter what you do. People get hurt at work. It's kind of a shit happens scenario. But I think WSIB and the government could use this as a tool to be like, all right, so, this specific thing isn't working. How can we improve this, And I'd be more than happy to help them. So this isn't a screw WSIB thing or anything like that. This is solely just to improve it and, kind of send it out there and say, this is what's wrong. This is how we could fix it. Great, because you always got to start with a negative to make it a positive in some way. So if something's negative, take that negative, think about it, and then improve it and make it a positive, right? So that's kind of what this is for. And that's who it's for. That's why I'm doing this. I'll get into the next step, or the next part, I guess. So I've had a lot of interviews on TV and stuff like that, and I will say that being the being the interviewee is way easier than being the interviewer, because when you're just the interviewee, you're just telling your story. The interviewer, for me personally, because it's my first time interviewing anyone or at all in life, it was a little bit of a challenge. So obviously the first few episodes might be a little bit awkward, might not have a good tone or pace to them, but I am aware of that, and I am aware that I do need to get better at being a host. It's just the first time I'm doing it. This is all just kind of, let's see what happens kind of deal. So I am improving on, or I am going to do my best to improve on my speech, making it more clear, asking the questions more fluently, things like that, and make the production a little bit better. Another thing during the episode, I was looking down a lot. So what I'm doing when I'm looking down is I have a notepad down here. So Scott, for example, which is the first guest that I had on, he gave a couple ideas or points. So I was like, you know what, let's write that down to circle back to them, or maybe later I want to do something with that idea. So if I'm looking down and writing, I'm just writing down ideas or something I want to talk about. So I'm not ignoring the person. If anything, I'm listening. And then the next part is that if I'm looking over to my left, so I have a tri-monitor set up right now. So the monitor that I'm looking at right now is where the person is. That's who I'm looking at. My camera's up top. If I'm looking over to my left, it's because I'm just making sure that the production is going well. So the video is still recording, microphones are still working, things like that. Just making sure that its production is still functioning and doing well. So that's kind of, so if I'm looking away in any way, I'm doing something or making sure of something, that something is functioning correctly, or I'm writing something down or whatever, So I just wanted to share that. So I'm not ignoring anyone, just trying to make sure everything's going well. And that's pretty much it. So that's pretty much the intro. I have other goals and other podcasts that I want to do. I have 5 other podcasts that I'm developing. I have 3 other businesses that I'm working on and developing. And this is just a piece of it. So I promised that I would do something along these lines to workers and other people for the last 4 years. And I think it's time that I kind of start to follow through with my word, I try to be a man of my word the best I can, and this is kind of the start when it comes to this topic. So I hope this is educational. I hope that people enjoy it and learn a lot from it, and no means I don't want to be negative towards WSIB in any way, or the Ministry of Labor or anyone like that, but there are negative things about both systems that, in my opinion, need to improve. And the only way to improve things is by calling it out and saying, this is what's wrong. I'm here to fix it. Let's fix it. So that's basically the goal of this podcast, is just, I want to see things improve for the future of people, So Yeah, that's basically it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. This podcast will be released every Monday. I'll try to do it or release it right in the morning. Yeah, so that's basically it. So yeah, enjoy the episode. Welcome to the BCH podcast. This is a new podcast. I'm starting to basically allow injured workers to kind of share their story. And yeah, so this is episode 1. This is going to be very new. I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to doing podcasts. So you get better as time goes on. And, this is just kind of a trial and error kind of thing until I can manage to get it to where I want it to be. So we have Scott DeMerchant on the show today. He's an injured worker. Me and him have been talking for, how long have we been talking? It's been probably years now, right?
No, it feels like years,
Yeah.
but probably 5 months.
5 months? Holy, okay. Feels a lot longer than that.
I know it does.
So basically, me and Scott kind of connected through group, and I was kind of looking for advice, but at one point when I went to this group, but then I've kind of realized that there's a spot for injured workers that need to share their story to the public, and basically just educate people, and that's kind of what this podcast is for. And there's been a few podcasts that I've seen that people do this, but I want it to be a very, like I said, very educational and just teach people kind of what can happen. And yeah, so we'll get started here, I guess. So what did you do for a living, and what did your life look like before injury?
I did a number of different things. Mainly, I was a security guard and a bouncer at clubs.
Okay.
Back before COVID took that all away from us.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time I had been injured, I was working at a meat packing plant. I was loading pallets with the finished product and getting them ready for delivery.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. That's
Pretty basic.
yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're just kind of your average worker, just trying to make ends meet and pay for things and just live your life kind of in some way. What did you? So what did your day of injury kind of look like? Like what caused the injury? What were you doing? That kind of stuff.
I was loading pallets with finished product of 23 or 27 kilogram boxes of meat.
Okay.
And, it was just kind of a usual day. Each pallet has a very specific number of boxes on it. Come out, I can't even remember, come out to like 5,700 kilograms of meat total on the pallet, something like that. And it was kind of you took it from the area and you placed it on, and it was kind of a repetitive thing. And I had been working all morning starting at 6, and it was around 10, 11 o'clock, something like that. And I had grabbed this last box and I kind of pulled it over my head to put it on the top. And I felt like a snap pop in my elbow. And, just a lot of pain. And I managed to put the, box on top and get the pallet to the front of the room where somebody else would take it to have it loaded on the truck. And I had mentioned to my supervisor, I said, I think I, hurt my elbow. And by that point, it was really starting to hurt. And my employer at the time had, immediately said, hey, do you want to ride? We'll take you down to the hospital. And I went and found out that I had torn the tendons in my left elbow. Pretty normal kind of injury when you're dealing with weight, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went down, obviously spent I think it was 4 or 5 hours waiting. I was quite busy that day. I got in and, testing, and at first they were kind of afraid that I had broken my elbow. Oh. Pardon. And ultimately, uh, it was discovered that I had merely torn the tendons in my elbow and my wrist.
Hmm.
Now, my wrist didn't actually hurt at the time, but over the course of the next month and a half, the pain just didn't stop. It was like constant, pain, and it wasn't like any other tendon that I had hurt. It was more like a burning, constant burning pain, and from the tips of my fingers to just above my elbow. Yeah, but that's kind of what that day was
That's
like.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting that it was a burning pain. I would assume it's more like a, um, like I remember when I got hurt, um, like I would have like phantom pains kind of every now and then. But like you said, it was all the time and it was constant and it was like a burning pain. Like in
Yeah,
some way, put like someone put like a fire like in your nerves in some way. Like but like not super hot, but just like where you can feel it. You know, like I don't really know how to describe it. That's interesting that that's what you felt. Um, yeah, you kind of beat me to my next question because I was going to ask you injuries from that day, but you've kind of covered that.
oh, sorry.
Oh, you're all good. So, was there any like mental health like issues after, or did it cause you any kind of mental health problems?
um, Strangely enough, um, I mean, it did have some mental issues with it, and it was kind of weird for me because um, being a security guard and a bouncer, I've had a lot of injuries. I've broken, I don't know how many bones in my hand.
Wow.
Uh, and I've had injuries over the course of my life. You know, but one of the big things I found was I suffer from anxiety a lot. Like I worry constantly that somebody's going to walk up to me and they're going to touch my left side, like my left arm. And I'm kind of, I kind of come off as standoffish in person.
You're being
But
protective. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I don't want somebody to touch me.
Okay.
And it would amaze you how many people will walk up to you, walk past you, and as they pass you, they just reach out like and they touch you to kind of tell you, hey, I'm here, don't back up into me or whatever. But it I have this constant anxiety, and my wife and I, if we go out, she has to position herself on my left side so that nobody can get to me.
Okay. So that's kind of the way you've kind of figured out how to like avoid that or like kind of cope with that in some way, like
Yeah.
just to avoid it because obviously you feel so when someone touches your left side, does it you feel pain from that?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So yeah, and out of like 10, like I know that's not a very good scale, but I don't really know how to scale it other than that. So like one being super bad or one being not that bad and you can deal with it to 10 being horrible, it's like what do you feel on that scale? Like when
Well,
you
it
get touched?
depends. It depends on the day, but it usually
Okay.
goes between 8 and 10.
That's
It
crazy,
usually
man. And it all
well,
like it's crazy to think that it all stems from just like and I'm not trying to like look down at your injury. It's not something to look down about. It's honestly for the ever since we started talking and you explained to me what has like what your original day of injury has caused, it's been stuck in my brain ever since. It's just fascinating me. I don't know, like it's very interesting that something as simple as lifting that people do at work every day can cause something that extreme. You know, like that's fascinating to me. Right.
well, I have a pain specialist that I go to see, Doctor Murmur, because I
Yeah.
don't want to name names
Yeah.
on here, but he's one of the best in Canada,
Okay.
and um, I actually spoke to him about this, and even the doctors don't know what it is that causes it, and they don't know how to cure it. And up until I think it was 2 years ago, it wasn't even listed as a disability.
That,
It is now, but I mean,
do you think
and it
that's
really,
because it's so unknown? Like it's not a very like I mean I want to get into like what has like what we're kind of talking about. So maybe I'll just ask that question. So you've obviously told me before
Mhm.
about CRIPS, so CRPS. Can you tell people what that stands for? Because I actually don't know. So
All right. So CRPS stands for Complex Regional Pain Syndrome. And this basically means that you feel pain in one of your extremities, be it an arm, a leg. Um, Strangely enough, you can have it in your head. And what it is it causes the nerves to fire wrong. So it's constantly telling your brain that you're in pain. And it's not just, oh, yeah, I'm in pain. No, it's down dirty, like you said before the burning. It's like you dipped your arm in liquid gas and lit it up. And
wow.
that's what you feel on a constant basis. Now it does fluctuate, but that's what it is. And it can occur from a car accident. It can occur from a broken bone, a tendon injury, a sprained muscle. Literally, almost any relatively minor injury can spark it, and they don't know why.
And you said it's a pretty. Is it a rare thing or is it a pretty well known thing?
To be honest with you, I think it's maybe not rare in the fact that um, people don't get it type deal, or
Okay.
only 1 in 1,000 get it. It's rare that people know about it.
Yeah.
Is what it
Okay. Yeah. So
is
it's
what
not
it.
a very well known like issue or
Oh,
health issue, I guess.
no, it's one of those things that if people can't see it, then they're like, "Oh yeah, that person's faking because they look fine."
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at me, I don't have any cuts or bruises or anything on my arm. I don't have a cast on my arm constantly. Um, the way that you can really tell is people that suffer from this, they swell up in the extremity mentioned. It causes like major friggin' swelling and discoloration. Like my skin will turn blue at times or purple.
Wow.
Um, I'll I'll swell up my fingers. End up. I wear a size 13 wedding ring now, and I mean, I started off. I when I before this, I was wearing a size 12, so my hand 12 is a whole other size. You know,
Wow.
so it can cause other things.
Wow.
It can cause paralysis in your limb if you have it long enough. It robs you of your strength. I mean, with my left, I can pick up a coffee cup on a good day. Um, but other than that, I'm not supposed to lift anything because I can end up hurting myself
Wow.
terribly and really not realizing it because it already hurts so bad.
Mm.
I'm not going to know it's something relatively minor at the time, right?
Yeah. That's crazy, man. Like that. It's just every time you talk about this, it just blows my mind. I don't know why. It's so interesting that like a basic workplace injury that like I mean obviously you have the basic trip slips and falls, but I would say
Yeah.
like lifting things causes, I'm sure that's high up in the like WSIB or workers compensation like injury uh like scale or whatever you want to call it. And like it's interesting how something just like lifting a box that you would do on a, because I remember you saying that you'd been working since you were like 13 or something like that, like you'd been working your ass off since then.
Yeah.
And what when did this happen? Like what age were you when this happened?
I was, let's see, I'm 52 now. I was about 47 when it
Okay.
happened.
All right. So that's, I mean, I don't know the math on that. I'm not good at math, but
About 4 or 5 years ago.
yeah, 5 years ago. So, and the other thing I wanted to ask you too about Crips was, I remember you telling me that there was another name for it, and I can't remember what exactly it was. What is the other? What's the name that people call it that have it?
Well, unofficially, a lot of people call it the suicide disease.
Okay, and and can you explain kind of why that is? Like, obviously, it's kind of
Well,
self-explanatory, but yeah.
I mean, one of the things that happens, I mean, human body is not meant to be in pain
No.
constantly. And when you see no way out and it's never going to stop, and you know that. I mean, I spent the first year thinking it was going to be over soon,
Mm-hmm.
but eventually some people, they do succumb they just want it to end and they don't
Yeah.
care how it ends anymore.
Yeah. And that
So,
that's just awful. So I guess we'll get into the next topic, and it kind of transitions somewhat well with that. Like, what, and we're gonna bring up our both our favorite people. So what is WSIB's like? Like, so when you got on WSIB and you were kind of trying to figure out like what was going on, why am I feeling this pain? Why is it becoming like a constant thing? Like, what is their solution to it? Like, do they have a solution? Did they do anything for it?
um,
Like, what was the plan?
okay. So when it started, WSIB didn't really say much.
Okay.
They said, okay, you're going to be out for, a couple of weeks, maybe a month. And then when it wasn't healing and I wasn't getting any better, they started sending me to other doctors to see if maybe I had done something else. I went to see a couple other doctors, and there was no real thing other than, yeah, you pulled, you know, tore tendons, and their solution, those doctors at the time, it was, well, you're getting older and you have diabetes and you smoke. So possibly it's taking you a little bit longer. So I ended up getting to approximately 6 months when they had mentioned this doctor that was in my area, and I went to see him. And I walked in, and that day was particularly bad, and my skin was like purple on my hand and knuckles, and my hand was extremely swollen. And he kind of looked at me and he said, "Are you having these symptoms?" And I said, "Yes, yes, I am." And he said, "I want to send you to this specialist because I think you have something called Crips."
Okay.
And I said, "Oh, okay, yeah. Like, what is that?" And he kind of explained it to me. He was more of a sports injury doctor. And yeah, I got my diagnosis from him. It was then reconfirmed by a pain specialist who I now see on a regular basis. And WSIB's response was that, okay, well, we're going to wait a little bit. So I ended up waiting about another month, and their solution was retraining because I couldn't do what I did before.
I'm not laughing because like it's funny. I'm just laughing like that. Just it doesn't like that doesn't make sense. Like, it just sounds like someone not educated made that decision. If
um,
you know what I mean. Like,
unfortunately, unfortunately, most people aren't educated on this.
no, and and I mean, from what I've understood by talking to some people, I actually have another person that I talk to on maybe not as regular as you, but every now and then he kind of just messages me out of the blue sometimes, and he has Crips as well, and like he's an older guy. I think he's older than you, I believe. I can't remember. And he said that there's not really any policy on it or anything. It's just I think it's put under the chronic pain kind of deal, where it's like that's kind of what it's put under.
Yeah,
And that's kind of what it is in some way, kind of that, but it does. I feel that it needs its own kind of separate deal in some way, or a separate policy. But What was it? And you said that I believe we talked, like we had a call on Facebook or something like that, and you were saying that apparently that Crips, if you catch it, you said it is curable or it's possible to cure it.
It is.
Okay.
It is. But you have to catch it within the first 6 months.
Wow. So and if you don't,
So
how long after? So how long after? So you went to the pain specialist. You they said that they think that you have Crips. WSIB said the solution is retraining somehow.
yeah,
How so between how long was that period of time? So like you said, you can catch it in 6 months. How long was from start of WSIB or start of your injury date to when you were finally diagnosed with it?
about a year and a half.
About a year and a half. So basically, what you're saying is that you were 6 months past the, or no, sorry, not. No, you were about a year past of
Yeah,
when you
I
could have
was.
caught it.
Because unfortunately, and you're saying you caught it, like it's
Yeah, I'm not
cold.
trying to say it's a disease. It's not, but
It's a condition.
yeah, it's a condition.
It's technically classified as a neurological injury.
Really? Wow.
Yes, because it has to do with your brain.
Hmm.
And the thing was, when I first injured my arm 5 years ago, we were at the very start of COVID.
And hospitals were backed up, and I remember because I got hurt during COVID as well, and like things were just very slow because they were just so like backed up and like getting into the like if you had to go to the hospital for an emergency, like you had to go in an ambulance. I mean, it's still like that to a certain extent. Like I mean,
It is.
but back then
Uh,
it was good luck. Like if you just go into
yeah.
the hospital
Uh,
because you're not feeling good, you're going to be waiting forever. So
well, in a lot of instances back then, when you went to the hospital because you weren't feeling good,
yeah,
they would turn you away.
yeah. Well, exactly right. Yeah. So it's so for people like you, for example, like you didn't really need to go to the hospital in an ambulance per se. So you
Well,
just went to the emergency room and waited. And like you said, that sometimes it was so crowded that they would just say, "All right, we can't take
yeah,
you in," right? And that's awful.
exactly.
That's horrible. So you said you went to the hospital after like the your employer said like we'll take you to the hospital. Did you go to the hospital after that period of time or no?
I did, but because it was like month, about a month and a half, and I was starting to get worried. My wife
Yeah.
was starting to get worried, um, and I went, back again, and I ended up waiting for, I think it was 9.5, 10.5 hours.
Wow.
And the only reason I had gotten in is because the nurse on duty that day had said, "Oh, I remember you," and okay, so there's a problem with your torn tendons. And I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "It still hurts," and she kind of said, "Well, okay, wait, and we'll see what we can do," type thing. And like night it was like 8.5, 9 hours later that I finally got in, and miracle of miracles, I actually saw the same doctor I had seen before.
Huh.
And he had said, "Yeah, well, you're getting older. You have diabetes. Maybe you're not healing as quickly as you used to, and that kind of thing." And then he had actually recommended I go see this one doctor who was still taking patients.
Okay.
And I talked to him, and he said, "Oh yeah, yeah, you just kind of tore your tendons in your elbow and wrist." And I said, "Oh, okay." And again, he said, "You're getting older. You have diabetes. You're no longer 10 feet tall and bulletproof."
Fair
That
enough.
kind of thing.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. Um. So after you were obviously diagnosed and you figured out like yes I have Crips and like what so once that happened like what was so obviously I'm assuming WSIB found out from this specialist or your doctor, one of the two. What was
Yeah.
what was their reaction to that?
Um, th- I I don't want to say anything bad. Um, However,
If
I
it's
ended
true
up
though, yeah, like,
okay.
yeah,
Okay, so that being said, I ended up. They wanted me to go see this doctor in Ottawa. At the time, my wife and I didn't have a vehicle,
Hmm.
so they arranged a car service for us, and I had to drive all the way to Ottawa to this doctor. And this doctor, not going to say this doctor's name, but I went in to see this doctor. She looked at my arm and she said, "Oh, this is going to help you." And she started preparing 2 syringes.
okay,
And by this point, my crips didn't go mid bicep, it was already passed into my shoulder. Oh, by the way, it can travel,
oh,
it can expand.
that's
I started from tips of my my left hand fingers to my mid bicep. This is how it started. And now I'm up to my shoulder, partially into my neck and into my back now on the left side. So she had said, "This is going to help you." And it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission, and injected me directly into my elbow with cortisone and
uh,
then into my neck as well. So 2 cortisone shots in
and
as many
just
in
to
as many minutes.
just to stop you there. So if I remember, I think I got cortisone too. I can't remember. I think I got it in my. It freezes your neck, correct? Like, or
Well,
that's the supposed to do.
what it does is it's supposed to kind of freeze, but it's supposed to be for pain.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what it does is it kills nerves.
Hmm.
It kills the nerve endings so that you no longer feel pain in that area. And it was amazing because she just gave me these 2 big injections, and I'm almost on the ceiling. I'm in so much pain. You can imagine if somebody touching you in that area hurts.
Yeah.
You can imagine what a cortisone shot would feel like.
Wow. That.
I mean,
Yeah, I can
it was
imagine that. I mean, that's like a
it was
punch.
like somebody trying to
Yeah.
bore a hole in my arm.
Yeah. That's like a punch over like a knife. Like it's like that. Like a punch. Like obviously that hurts, but obviously being stabbed is not great either. So
Yeah.
and it's
And
definitely worse. So yeah, that's and I mean I can see her logic for it for sure. Like I can understand because like I mean if you didn't have crips and you were just I don't know just
but
regular nerve damage per se, that might work. But I don't think I don't know if she understood the crips thing. Like I'm not really sure. But
no,
yeah,
and my wife was at the time, she was very much like, because this lady didn't really give me any warning, no nothing. She said, "I'm going to give you these 2 shots. It's cortisone. Is that okay?" And I said, kind of looked at her and I said, "Okay, like, sure." And then she had already had them ready, so she just grabbed the one, kind of grabbed my elbow with her hand and jabbed me with it.
hmm.
And we're because it had to go down into the joint, it was probably about that long a syringe, or not syringe,
Needle.
needle.
Yeah.
And then the one in my neck ended up being even longer. The one in my neck was probably a good 5, 6 inches long.
Wow.
Um, well, they have to get through all the flesh
True.
and down to the bone, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember
And
that. It was. I remember. So I have when I went to go see my neurologist, they put 2 I think cortisone shots in my neck because I was complaining about a head injury, and they stuck
mm-hmm.
it in like just the back of my like
Like,
neck right here, like there,
yeah,
and like I had 2 big bumps on the back of my head for like 4 days, and they said, yeah, this should help. It like helped for like 20 minutes, and then just like it went away, and then I just had bumps on the back of my head for 4 days. So it just, I don't know, I didn't find it really that effective personally. So when you got so when that happened, like, so when she did the shots or whatever, did they like
Help?
help, I
No,
guess, but did it also like, did it cause more pain as well, I guess? Like what, I guess what I'm asking is like, what did it do? Did it do anything or no?
so the one in my elbow swelled up to, well, by the time we got home, my wife was actually very concerned because I couldn't get my jacket off. I had put my jacket back on at the clinic, and then I couldn't get my jacket off on my own, and my wife had to help me. And she's a crafter, so she's constantly doing craft stuff, and she has a tape measure, so she measured around my elbow. It was bigger than my bicep.
Wow.
My elbow swelled bigger than my bicep.
And the pain
And
didn't go away.
God,
Did
no.
it become worse?
Yeah, for a while it became even worse.
Okay. Wow.
Nowhere near where it could be, but it was. Now, try to imagine you're in a car, you're traveling down Highway 401, and we all know exactly how good a highway that is.
Yeah.
And I mean the surface wise.
Yeah.
And every little jolt, every little bump, everything jars you to the bone, to the point where you're almost in fear because you can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
It got to the point where if I was getting in a car, I had to make sure that I had 3 blankets and 4 pillows with me, so I could prop up my arm.
And it would like protect it. It was like a padding in some way. Yeah.
I was like patting it.
Wow. That's crazy, man. Like, it's like, I guess that's what, like, what I find interesting is that they don't understand this at all. Like, they don't understand why like, because I mean, it makes sense. Like, if you have something like heavy fall on you and you have like nerve damage where it's you're never gonna feel something there again, that makes sense. But it's like yours is almost the opposite in some way, where it's like you feel everything, and it's like the pain is like multiplied in some way, I guess, so like that seems it like that's just it just may, I don't know, I find it interesting. It's horrible and it's sad, but it's definitely, like that's just, and now that I've met a few people that have it and they all have kind of a similar like description, it's just like, why have we not figured this out yet? Like, I mean, obviously there's definitely people smarter than I am, but like trying to figure it out, I'm assuming, or I would hope, but it's just, yeah.
The brain and the neurons are very complex,
Yeah.
and I'm sure we haven't even scratched the surface yet.
No. Well, I mean, yeah, because brain injuries and stuff like that, like, I mean, we're trying to figure out PTSD. I mean, you think of all the different brain injuries, and like we don't get it, like at all, because it's new, right? Like, I mean, we didn't.
Sometimes I think if I had a head injury, it would be easier to explain to somebody, but I don't. I don't have some big scar on my head. I don't, that kind of thing. I mean, my injury was to my elbow, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
But what you got to understand is nerves run throughout your entire body. And my wife explained it better to somebody at one point, and I like her explanation. It's kind of like you have a broken tooth. Yeah. And if you've ever had a broken tooth and an exposed nerve and tried to breathe outside in the cold air, you'll understand grips. It's like every breath you take pulls, ice cold air over that nerve and sends a shock through you, right?
That is a good way of explaining it. Like, I mean, I don't understand it because I don't have it, but like that is a great way to explain it. Just for the people that are learning from this podcast about it, like it's a good way to think about it, I guess. Because the way I thought about it was that it's like, and you kind of said this earlier, where it's because obviously, like, so when I lift my arm like this, for example, like my brain, I don't know it, but because it's become just such a common thing, my brain has told my arm to lift my arm. You know, like
Yep.
it's kind of wild to think about. That's how our bodies work and how
Mhm.
complex our body is. That like I lift my arm, and at one point, like a second ago, my brain told me lift your arm, dude. Like,
Yep.
but anyway, so you said earlier that WSIB said that apparently the solution was sending you back to work, which I can't
Well,
wrap
no,
my or that was
at
a
first their solution was retraining, and their thought was is I could go work as a cashier, or
yeah.
I could work as a stay-home person and work my computer and stuff. You know, like work for a call center type deal, right? Now the problem is that when you work anywhere, like let's for instance say I worked at Walmart as a cashier, I can't actually stand for more than about 15-20 minutes. Um, my balance goes out. You would not believe how much of your balance relies on your arms, because it does. You know, when you walk and you kind of you do this, you
Mm-hmm.
know, back and forth. And then it was not only can't I stand for a very long time, I can't really walk as far as I'd like to without a cane, because my balance is off there. And they would want me to, if it was like you go in and it's kind of slow. Oh, well, you know, go sweep floors or mop floors or go help them with the stock. And again, I can't do that because I can't lift anything with my arm, and using a mop or a broom requires both arms, and I can't use my left arm for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
So
I remember you telling me that like when we first started talking and like when we had that call, and I think me and
there's
you talked about is why would a place like Walmart or any of those really anyone, why would like, and I'm not trying to be mean, but this is just like I think this is reality and being honest, and that's what I want this podcast to be, is that
Mhm.
like why would they hire you if they could hire some 16-year-old kid that can do everything they ask and
Then some.
yeah, and what it be basically whatever they want, right? So and it's like I don't mean to
No,
slight you by that, but I think it's reality, like it's realistic.
it is. If I was an employer and I had a business, and some older gentleman came to me and said, I'd like a job and I can do this,
Mm,
like work the cash. I'd say, okay, well, you know, your other duties will include. And he went, oh, no, no, no. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do the other thing. I'd be more apt to be like, well, like, why do you want to work then? Because obviously you can't. I mean, yeah, it's nice that you can do this thing and I can pay you for it, but ultimately it's not cost effective for me
mm,
to hire you. Um, about the only way I could see it being hired is they have some incentive that the government gave them to hire a disabled person.
yeah.
And I realize that there are those out there, but I mean, like you said, the long and the short of it is, at the end of the day, I can't do the job.
Well, and the other thing you mentioned earlier as well is that like as you get older with crips and like it's just gonna get worse, right? So, what was it? And how long did they how many days a week and how long per day did they want you to work?
Oh, they wanted me to work 40 hours, 44 hours a week, 8 hours a day, eight and a half
Um,
hours.
and like being real, and that's 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Wow. So, and
Oh,
I
they
mean,
were very.
and did they ever offer like a? Because I remember like I didn't take it, but like I remember when I was getting off WSIB, and they offered me like a, I can't remember what the word is. Like where you basically like a build up program in somewhere where basically you go to work for 2 hours a day, then the next week you do four, then six, and then eight, and so
Yeah,
on
they
until you
offered me
can.
that too.
And
And I did go back to work for a while.
okay,
I went back under modified duties, but the company I was working for, there was a lot of people in that company that was very um, unsympathetic.
yeah,
And um, I ended up, one of the things is I can't really be in the cold.
yeah,
The cold affects my nerves a lot. So when you're working with meat, you're working in a freezer. So I actually had one. person at that job that he was very adamant that I was faking. And he actually grabbed a box of the finished product meat and said, "Hey, Scott, think fast." And he threw it at me.
Wow.
Well, let me tell you, normally I would have just grabbed it. But at that point, I was kind of paranoid.
Yeah.
And as soon as he threw it at me, I simply stepped away.
Yeah.
And
Of
this
course.
individual, he ended up, the box landed on the floor. The box split open, the bag split open. The meat was actually on the floor at that point, and at that point they had to throw it out. And instead of giving him trouble, they gave both of us trouble because I should have just grabbed it when he threw it, and he shouldn't have thrown it.
Wow. That's crazy, man. Like that's like I
But
don't
ultimately,
I don't get
that
that.
that company kept me on, and then brought me into the office, and I was doing paperwork. But again, I couldn't really do a lot of paperwork because I couldn't sit there for 8 hours, and they wanted me to just sit there and do paperwork nonstop for 8 hours, and I couldn't do that. So ultimately, they said, "No, we don't have a spot for you." And at that point, my pain specialist had said, "No, he's just really not capable of working at this point."
Yeah. And so then that's a because I mean to become a doctor it's not easy. Like you can become like a regular family doctor and that's already hard. And then to specialize in something, like you got to go through a lot of school and a lot of education to become like a pain specialist. They got to go to
Yeah,
like an act. I don't know how long it is because I'm not planning on being a doctor or ever was because I'm not smart enough to do that. But it takes time to become that. Like you don't just show up and I'm like, yeah, I'm the pain specialist, you know. So they know what they're talking about. Like,
yeah.
and you know, like I think that's horrible that WSIB doesn't seem to really like. I hope that they're listening to it, but I are they listening to that doctor at all or no?
No, they're not.
Oh,
And one of the other side effects of having Crips, and this is kind of a weird one, is what's called brain fog.
okay,
So at at times during the day, um, roughly I'd say probably when it first started, it was only happening like once or twice a day, but now it happens anywhere between 10 and 20 times a day. Is um, my brain will simply kind of shut down for a little bit. It's like, nope, nope, that's too much pain. And it'll just, so I'll end up going into this state where I'm just kind of staring off into space, and I'm not doing anything. I'm not saying anything. Um, this is why they don't want me to drive, because I can slip into this state at any
yeah.
time. But it's not like a seizure. It's just that your brain has said, okay, this is too much now, and just kind of send your brain on a vacation for a while.
Well, and
You know,
that's not good for like at work either because realistically,
no,
like I mean, if you're
no,
let's say that physically you were fine to go to work. Like let's say you were old Scott, you were stronger than ever. Like if you have that brain fog issue, let's say you're operating like a lift or something and you're down below, and then Buddy is up there, I don't know, working on power lines or whatever he's doing, and you go into that brain fog state and you're just shut down in some way. Like that's not safe for other people either, and that's horrible. Like I mean, you can't be at work doing that, like because I mean that can
well,
cause other people to get hurt too, and I mean you to get hurt as well, which is not good.
yeah.
So I
The
mean that
first
wasn't a
time,
great example, but you know, like I think people are
well,
getting what I'm saying.
the first time it happened, I was still working at the company I had been injured at, and I guess a couple people came up and they were like waving their hand in front of my face, and I was, I was still in the freezer and I was standing there, and I'm not there. And then I got called in the office and they're like, "Well, you fell asleep while you were doing your job." And I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "You were just standing there, you weren't doing anything, you obviously fell asleep." And I'm like, "No, like I didn't." And I ended up, I got really concerned at that because that had never happened to me before.
Well, they were
And
telling you something that they were saying that you were experiencing this thing that you didn't realize that you were experiencing, and I can see how that would worry you. Absolutely, like that totally makes sense. You know,
yeah,
so
so I tell you, I made a beeline for home. I actually left work that day. I just said, no, I'm leaving. I can't do this. And I went home and I told my wife about it, and she got really upset, obviously. Um, and, made like 3 or 4 calls to my doctor at that point and managed to get the nurse on the line, and she explained it to us. She's like, oh yeah, and Dr. So and so will go into that more when you come in. But yeah, this is not unheard of.
Hmm.
So, you know, not only do I have to deal with pain and I can't lift anything with my arm really heavier than a coffee cup. I can't put my arm around my wife. I can't, you know, really hug her anymore with my left arm. Um, I have to be constantly on guard that somebody doesn't touch me, and so does she. It's a really terrible thing for her because she wants it to end so badly for me. And there's been many a night she sat here and cried. She's so frustrated with everything because she can't help. And when you love someone and that you don't want to see them in constant pain.
No, no,
You know,
definitely. Yeah, that's awful, man. Like that's. I mean, I think most people like. I mean, something as simple as like a hug. Like most. There are some people that can go without hugs, but it's like I think they're very few and far between, if you know what I mean. Like, I mean, the people, everyone likes to feel appreciated and loved, and that
yep.
they're there, and But I can definitely see that you're. Oh,
That was my wife.
oh, hey. So when it comes to, I remember you mentioning, and I am horrible at memory. My memory sucks. I remember you mentioning something about medication and WSIB not covering it. Can you explain that maybe to the
Okay, so
listeners?
when I first was injured, I was on, as you can imagine, I was on Tylenol and an anti-inflammatory. And for the most part, that was all covered. I picked up my medication and however, it wasn't working. So I went to um, I went to an antidepressant because apparently this one antidepressant, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it. And I don't know if we're allowed to mention it on here, but it was an antidepressant, and I can't remember the name of it. But what it's supposed to do is it has a, a different effect on people with nerve damage, and it helps with the swelling and stuff, and it also supposed to help with the pain, but to be honest, it did nothing for me. And then I ended up, I got on a Butrans patch, which is morphine.
Okay.
And it's a topical patch. It goes on your skin and it releases a certain amount of morphine every hour. And when I first started, it was a 5 milligram patch, which releases 5 milligrams of morphine every hour on the hour. So, as you can imagine, they don't want you to drive while you're wearing
No,
that
yeah. I mean, morphine messes
because
you up, man. Like, I've been there.
it does.
Like,
It does. It
yeah.
messes you up. When they first got me the patch, and I went and I bought it, I had to buy it myself. I think it cost $140 for 4 of these patches. And my wife said to me, she goes, "Do you want to wait till we get home, or do you want to put it on now?" And I said, "You know what? I'm in agony. Put it on now." So I put it on, and by the time we drove home, I think it was a 5 minute trip, I was already passing out. I was,
Wow.
you know, um, the not the lack of pain, but the fact that the pain had went down to a point where it was like, okay, now you can handle it, was like an aphrodisiac at that point.
Hmm.
It was like, oh my God. And I hadn't really slept hardly at all in like almost 6 months. I hadn't really slept hardly at all, like patches here and there. But, at this point, you know, I get my pain down to a level that, okay. And I just kind of passed out. And I think that first day I passed out for like 16 hours.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
A nap of the lifetime, man. Holy fuck.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. Like, so,
Well,
and And so you said that you get 4 a pack or whatever you said, like you get 4
Yeah,
of those patches. And you said, how much did you say it was again?
about $140 for the 5 milligram patches.
And how many of those patches would you
You
go
get
through?
4.
How much? What would you go through in a day, for example? Like,
Well, no, each patch is good for a week.
oh, it's good for a week. Okay, so basically each pack is good for about a month then.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
and then you know, uh, I had gotten home. I was like basically I was passing out. So my mom or my wife had said maybe you should go up and lay down. So I said okay, and I went. And this was about 11. I went and got them and put it on. And by about 4:30, 5 o'clock, she thought maybe I should get him up and get him some food and stuff. So I come downstairs and I was staggering. I was so bad. My brother was there with her because he was worried about me too. And I was sitting there and I was passing out while I was sitting there, and I had a lit cigarette in my hand. And she just come up, she took it from me, and she said, "Honey, I think you need to go lie down again." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And I had just lit this cigarette, and my brother said, "Now I know he's fucking tired because I put it out." And it was normally that's something I hadn't really. That's not something I would do. If I lit one, I was going to finish it, and then I'd go do whatever. But yeah, that was my first exposure to the Butrans patch.
You down with the stairs.
Oh, huh. I also almost pretty much fell down the stairs that day
Wow.
because I very unsteady on my feet at that point.
Yeah, I
I
remember.
kind of
I remember
slid down.
morphine, man. Like morphine was it was scary. Like it was. I remember like when I first got to the hospital, it was like that's what they. I think that's what they gave me. I'm not sure. But that's what they gave me. I believe it like for the first probably week I was in the hospital. It was it was very blurry. I don't remember
Yeah.
it very much, and it was intense. Like I didn't know what the hell was going on. Like it was bad. So I can imagine like being on it every day. Like that can mess you up, I bet. And I mean that's another point to the whole work thing or the return to work thing is that how the hell are you supposed to be on morphine and go to work at the same time? Like when that's the only real solution that you've really found so far.
Yeah. Well, I mean, after 5 years or 4.5 years of being on this patch, my patch is now at 20 milligrams now,
Wow.
$320.
and it costs $320 for that. And they can't give me a bigger dose because the one I wear is actually for cancer patients that are
Wow.
dying. Like it's meant to keep them comfortable.
Yeah. So you're on like
After,
heavy levels then of morphine every day.
yeah.
Wow. And
Um,
so did you so actually sorry, what were you about to say?
well, where we are now, we have a pharmacy right nearby, and that's where I get my patches. And there was a girl, and she was, I don't know, she was like 16 or 17, and she's working in the pharmacy. And I asked for my patches, and she had never encountered the patch before. And kind of went over to the pharmacist and said, "Hey, what is this?" He goes, "It's a Butrans patch. It's 20 milligrams. It's meant." And you know how people are. They're like, "Oh, it's meant for this." He goes, "It's meant for people who are dying from cancer and stuff to keep them comfortable." And this girl comes over and she hands it to me, and she's all kind of looking at me really weird. And I'm like, "What?" And she goes, "Well, I'm really sorry to hear that you're dying. You seem very nice."
Wow.
And I kind of looked at her and I went, "No, I'm not dying." And she's like, and then the pharmacist, who I know quite well, obviously, he said, "Don't worry about it. I'll explain it later."
Yeah.
And uh, a month later, when I went to get my next box, she had said to me, she goes, "That's terrible that you have to go through life in this fog because of the medication, the injury, the pain, and everything." She's like, "What are you going to do when this stops? Like working?" Oh,
Yeah, like I mean that's are we good?
yeah, we're good.
Okay. All right. So yeah, like that's I mean that's
horrible, man. Like, I mean, I don't think anyone would even, wish their worst enemy that type of life, like that's just, and it's, you're brave for going through it and continuing fighting and being a
Well,
part of, society and doing everything you can. So when
I
it
don't.
comes to, the medication, so does WSIB pay for that at all or no?
Nope.
What
Nope.
have they explained why?
It took me a while to get the explanation, and the explanation is kind of weird.
Okay.
So my wife and I had been keeping all the receipts because we kept getting told all you have to do is submit your receipts through the portal
Mhm.
and everything will be covered. So we kept doing that. And then, a couple months would go by and we hadn't heard anything. So I would call back or she would call back and they'd say, oh, well, you didn't do it correctly. We're missing this piece of information. And this happened 6 times. Yeah, it happened 6 times that we had to resubmit everything and, that kind of thing. And finally, I was up to 15 milligram patches. So this should tell you. I started with 5 milligram patches. I was on that for a year. I went to 10 milligram patches. I was on that for a year. And then I went to the 15 milligram patches and I had been on that for about 4 months. And I was somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think we're about what, $15,000. At that point, we were like $15,000 out of pocket.
Wow.
And I finally got a hold of my worker and I said, this has got to stop. I said, I'm out of pocket on everything. The money that you're giving me that I'm supposed to be using to live is going to the patches. And they're like, well, that's not our problem. And I said, but everything that you guys said, it was covered. And they said, well, you got your computer handy? And I said, yes. And they said, go to this for the WSIB. So I did. And they said, and it was all those little drop down menus.
The fun
So
website that we all have to use.
yeah. So after about 15 minutes of them navigating me, I finally came to it. It was like buried deep within their pages that they don't cover opiates. They never have. They never will.
And is there like an explanation on why that is, or it just says we don't cover it?
Just they don't cover it.
They just don't cover it. So
that being said, the worker I was with at the time had said to me, because I kept telling him I need these patches, and for the most part, he wasn't really giving me an answer as to why they weren't covering it. And finally, this day, he said, I'm trying to save you. And I said, I don't understand. What do you mean you're trying to save me? And he kind of hemmed and hawed and he goes, well, you people are very susceptible to addiction like that, like alcohol and drugs, you people. And I kind of went, what, human? And he went, well, no. And he's like hemming and hawing and he goes, aren't you like part native? And I said,
that's
yeah,
awful.
I'm part native. And he goes, well, I'm trying to save you from addiction. You people are very susceptible to that.
Wow. I mean, addiction, anyone can get addicted to anything. Like, I mean, it's not
That's
just
what
natives, it's not just, white people,
oh, well,
it's everybody. I
yeah,
mean, everyone has their thing, right? Like, I mean, some
well,
people's stuff is minor, some people's stuff is more extreme.
yeah.
That's horrible that was said, and I think that's, I just, I don't know. I don't even know what to say to that. Like that's horrible. And I don't understand why. Like to me, like the work, like the medication policy or whatever you want, whatever it is, like it should be as simple as if it's related to your workplace injury, it should be covered. Like it should be that simple. Like I mean, if a doctor said, all right, he has this is uh part of his work, like he needs to take this because of his workplace injury. Well,
Yeah.
then it's as simple as, all right, we're gonna pay for it. It shouldn't be a mind game
Well,
for months on end trying to figure out why they're not paying for it.
they
So
did pay for some things.
okay.
They paid for my not anxiety, depression medication because
Mm-hmm.
I am now diagnosed with acute depression and anxiety as well as the crips.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of goes hand in hand. Um, my my shrink at the time had said that I lost my identity because I kind of put a lot of my identity into my strength, like my physical strength. And, for years I got called ogre, you know, big, strong, tough guy, not very smart. And um, I honestly, I don't feel like I'm that person anymore. I don't feel like I can do anything that I used to do, you know? And, it's crazy when you think about it, about how much of your identity you wrap up in what you do in your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, yeah,
any
like, I mean, all workers, like, I mean, at one point before I got hurt, I thought I was invincible and nothing could hurt me, and then reality hit, and well, here we are. So, but like, so I get where you're coming from on that, and I can definitely see how that can definitely take away from your mental health, and that you not being, like, I mean, I think even people that, as time, like, let's say you didn't get injured, people that just get older as time goes on, like, you start to lose the abilities that you used to do when you were 20, no problem, right? Like,
yeah,
like, I mean, you see that with, like, older people trying to, like, shovel snow or cut grass or anything like that, like, just some basic tasks that you used to be able to do
yeah.
with no problem, and now seems
Things you
like
take for granted.
impossible. Yeah, things you take for granted, exactly. So, well,
Um, I think one of the worst things for me was we had a friend who had two little girls, and one was basically a newborn, and one was about 3. And these two little girls were quite close to my wife and I, and their mother was a very good friend of ours, still is actually. And these girls used to run into the house, and they would run into my arms, and I would pick them up, and I'd swing them around. And the little girl, the 3-year-old, she looked at me the one day, and because I kind of, keeping her at arm's length,
mm-hmm.
and she said, "Don't you love me anymore?" And I was like, "Of course I love you. Like, why would you even say that?" She goes, "You don't pick me up anymore. You don't swing me around." And I had to look at her, and I had to tell her, I said, "Because I can't. I'm not strong enough anymore. My arm doesn't work." And that really, really
I bet.
bothered.
Yeah, I bet, man. Like, it's terrible, like, what you've gone through, and I mean, I respect the hell out of you for going through what you have, and you're still here and fighting, and like I said, you're very brave for that, and I think you deserve more credit than you get, so,
I think we all do.
what's that?
I said, I think we all deserve more
Oh,
credit.
absolutely. And that's kind of the point of this kind of podcast, is to kind of empower people that have kind of gone through something that none of us really wanted to go through. But again, that's everybody, I think, goes through something, whether that's a workplace injury or adversity or whatever you want to say. Like, people go through things every day that they don't necessarily want to go through, but they have to, and that's kind of the goal behind this podcast, is basically just to, one, allow people to share their stories, but also make people not feel like they're alone, like, I mean, like I said, I know many people that are, a few people that have crips and go through similar struggles that you do, and I wanted to make sure that they know that they're not alone. And then obviously just your average people that haven't gone through a workplace injury to be educated and learn about this stuff, because personally, for me, I find it very interesting, and I don't think it's talked about enough, and I think it should. So, and that's why I'm starting this. So,
One thing
oh,
one thing I'd like to say,
yeah,
don't discount your relatives, your brothers, your sisters, or anything else. They're your biggest support system.
yeah.
And if we bring this more to light, then it's going to be better for everybody.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I really hope that's what happens. I really hope people get an appreciation for this podcast, because, as you and I both know, I mean, my injury was very extreme and very insane, and probably definitely should have never happened. So you can have something like that happen to you, or you can, and again, I'm not trying to discredit you or say something that I shouldn't, but it's like you were doing an average daily task that most people can do on a regular basis, no problems, and now you're here, and it's like, so
Exactly.
don't take those average things that you can do for granted, because there's some people that have had that taken away from them. But you know,
Exactly.
anyone can become an injured worker. That's why I don't really like. That's why I don't love the fact that we get called injured. Like, we're workers at the end of the day. We were injured at work, and I now feel that our former governments and our current government, to a certain extent, that we are, because we can't make money for people, we are throwaways now, and that's a part of the reason why I started this podcast, was to allow average people to people that have gone through something absolutely horrible that should have never happened, like basically just everyone to share their story and get the public to see that this is what's happening, that and anybody in the public can become an injured worker, and that's the point of this, is to educate people on what can happen.
Doesn't matter what your injury is.
Nope.
Every injury is valid.
Yep.
I mean, it can be something as dramatic as having a building fall on you there, Jacob.
Yeah. I mean, we all have our own crazy stories, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
or it can be something as simple as you pick something up wrong and you tore a tendon, and now you're kind of screwed for life.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't judge somebody's injury by how they look.
No, 100%. Yeah, like, I mean,
because you know, I've met people that, I mean, one of the jobs I did as a security guard was I was a security guard for an ODSP office. And I used to see this one gentleman, I worked there for about 2 years. I used to see this one gentleman, he would come in and he'd be hobbling along on crutches. And he would go in and he would pick up his check. And as he left, he'd sling those crutches over his shoulder and he'd keep walking. And one of the workers came out and she was watching him and she was kind of laughing. And I said, he's bucking the system. He's not injured and that. And she goes, no, he has a mental disability, but he thinks that we won't give him his check if he doesn't look injured or look like he's disabled. And I said that, I kind of laughed at it at the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, what that poor guy was going through was he honestly felt that he wouldn't get the help he needed unless he looked like he needed it.
Yeah. And I mean, like, and that's another thing too to talk about WSIB, is that psychological and mental health is not looked at as serious as a physical injury. Like, it goes physical injury up here and then mental health down here. Like, they send you to a therapist and say, and that's basically their way of checking the box. Whether you get better or not, it doesn't mean, like, as long as you go to the therapist and they say, yep, he went to a therapist said something, that's a check in the box for them. And it's like, that's not what it should be about. It should be making like, I'm now healed. I had a great therapist, but at one point it was pretty rough, like, I mean, honestly, like, during my time with my therapist, I never spoke to my therapist about the building collapse or anything, but it was really just talking about something else to avoid talking about that, and that's kind of my way of coping with the building collapse mentally. But we
all have our different methods, right?
Yeah. So I did just want to ask two more things. So regarding, like, I guess, kind of treatment / kind of medical stuff, I believe you said to me a little while ago, I can't remember when it was, but it was a while ago, but did you mention that, like, you need like a mobility scooter or something like that in the winter?
Yeah, I do. For me to have any kind of real independence, they don't want me to drive.
No.
Obviously, I'm on 20 milligrams of morphine a day. They really don't want me to drive a car or a truck. Mm-hmm. I need a cane to get around, really. So having a mobility scooter would be, top notch. And living here where I do in Canada, in Ontario, we get a lot of snow, obviously, and the weather is very bad. If I have a regular type of mobility scooter, it's not really going to help me in the winter because the cold really affects it. Now, they have a new one. It's a completely enclosed. It's like a little tiny car. But if I was to brain fog in this, my hands would slip from the handlebars and it would stop.
Okay.
Unlike a car where my foot could just keep pressing on the gas, and it would keep going.
So if your hand stops touching the bar, it basically shuts down and waits for someone to come see what's going on. Yeah, rescue you. Yeah. Well, that's cool.
But it's all got a heater in it,
keep you warm.
So I would be able to stay warm, and I would be able to get out and do more on my own.
Yeah, and the shelter would kind of keep the wind off you as well, which would cause you not as much pain. And have you gone to WSIB at all to like see if they would pay for it or do anything for you?
They told me that they won't even pay for, like a normal one that's exposed to the elements or whatever.
Really?
One of the older ones that cost like, $800-900, they won't even entertain that thought. I did get offered a wheelchair.
Huh.
They said that they could get me a wheelchair, and a wheelchair won't do anything because I actually can't push myself in a wheelchair. My left arm does not. It will not work for a wheelchair.
Did they offer like an electric wheelchair? Like
Nope, just a regular wheelchair.
Again, I'm not laughing because of what you're. You know what I'm laughing about, and it's just.
Yeah.
Oh.
You either gotta laugh or you gotta cry. One of the two. And to be honest with you, they offered me a couple of things for my condition. They offered me an elbow brace, which I do have, which didn't really do anything because I can't wear it because when it touches my skin, it causes more pain. They offered me a sling, which again I can't wear because it touches my skin and it causes pain. The things they offered were kind of, I don't know. I kind of feel like it was like a left-handed offer,
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what it sounds like to me too. Sounds like they don't want to pay for things that they probably should, and well.
No, that's kind of the way I felt.
Yeah. Because like I just, it's pretty clear that that there is a disability part of your injury. Like I don't think, I think anyone listening to this can. I mean, you don't need to be a doctor to realize that, and it's like from what you've told me in the past and even now, it's just like it's pretty clear that there is no going back to work for you. There is no. So let's just try to make obviously you've lost a lot in life that you obviously miss, and it's like if we can make that a little bit better, or make your life a little bit better by giving you a mobility scooter that can kind of do what you need it to do, then why not, right? Like, I mean, it gives you something, right?
A normal mobility scooter that's exposed to the elements is around, like I said, around anywhere between $800 and say $1,500. The one I need, which only came out in the last like 3 or 4 years, it started at like $8,999.
Okay. So I wonder. Hold on. Let's look it up.
I mean, now they're cheaper now because there's a couple other companies that are making.
Do you remember what it was called? Like, what would I type in to find it?
It's called a Geo mobility scooter. So GIO mobility scooter.
GIO mobility scooter. So I've seen these before. I've seen a whole bunch of like old people rocking these things. They're basically they're kind of like a mini smart car, if that's a possibility.
Yeah.
So
basically, but instead of having a gas pedal where your foot can, end up inadvertently pushing the gas, it's got handlebars with a throttle so that if you pass out, inevitably your hands are going to fall, and then it will stop and it won't go any further. So there's no real danger of you, rolling out into traffic or, running into something or somebody. And even if you did, you're only going about 12 kilometers an hour. So you're not going to technically kill somebody at 12 kilometers an hour.
No. I mean, if you said that it stops like the minute you kind of, it's got locking doors, all that stuff.
Yep.
So, and the price right now is 7,700 Canadian. So it has gone down a little bit. So I think what I'm going to do, and I don't know how well this is going to go, and this is just a flyby thought, but what I'd like to do is I want to set up a GoFundMe page, and I want to see if we can get enough donations to pay for this for you, and so you can have something to drive around in the winter, or
Well, I do
anytime
appreciate it.
really, because I think that's awful that WSIB is not paying for this for you, and even if even if we can get half, it's better than nothing. So,
It is.
and yeah, like I think I think it's shameful that WSIB isn't paying for this, considering that they pay for a whole bunch of other things and this is half the cost of what they pay. So that's what we're gonna do. I will set up a GoFundMe page after this and do this for you. And then whenever I'll kind of give you updates on how it's going, and I'll send you the link, obviously, and I'll put the link in the description below, and you can feel free to donate to it. And then, honestly, my final question for you is there anything that you would change about WSIB or any ideas to improve it? I think we've talked about, obviously, improving the medication plan, providing, mobility equipment or even physical equipment from people that I've spoken to before. Is there anything else that you would want to change about WSIB or improve about WSIB?
Yes. Yeah. One of the things I would change is I would want them to educate their people more on empathy.
Okay.
And it's not the bottom line to get that person back to work, because you know what, at the end of the day, if somebody's injured and all you're doing is saying, you know what, we'll get you back to work, and that person already knows that they're not going to go back to work, it ultimately it feels like you're lying and we're just going to make you go back to work, is what it feels like they're saying to me.
No,
you know,
for sure. Like, I mean, I think it's because, one, sending you back to work is the easiest and cheapest route, but also I think that that's kind of their goal. I mean, we see that, like, I'm not against employers getting money back, but I also believe that when you're getting $2.5 billion, but I'm an employer, so this is an employer saying this, that we can take, even if we took the 0.5 and reinvested it into WSIB and looked at programs that's like, how could we make this better, or what could we do to improve this for workers? I think that wouldn't be that bad, and employers would still get $2 billion back, which is insane, is an insane amount of money. So, like, it's not
money,
and that's the kind of stuff. Like, I mean, they could take $7,700 or whatever that mobility scooter costed, and be like, hey, Scott, do you want this thing? Like, that seems like an easy thing to do. Yeah.
Do you want this thing, and do you want it to be red, blue, or green? You know, that kind of thing. And I mean, at the end of the day, that would make me feel like I'm a person and I'm valued. You know, I'm 52 years old. I'm going on 53. I'll be 53 here in January 25th. And, you know, I never really thought that I would get to the point where I can't work or anything. I just didn't. You know, I started when I was 13. I was working on farms. You know, my whole life has been, you know, dedicated to working with my muscles, you know, my body, you know. And I know a lot of people out there will say, well, a security guard doesn't really work. They just kind of sit around. Well, I mean, that could be your opinion, but ultimately, if you don't have those security guards around, you know, bad things happen.
Well, when were you a security guard? Like, what time frame was that, like, in years, or what decade?
I started as a bouncer when I was 17. Okay. And I will admit it was because I liked hanging around at the clubs, and I liked the music, and, you know, I did drink. You know, I remember my first paycheck from the club when I was 17 or 18 was $8.50 for my first paycheck, because I had drank a lot of it. I had drank a lot of it, you know. And, you know, but ultimately, you know, my father was, you know, very influential in that. He liked to scrap. He was very good at it. He was a military guy, and he did it in the military, right? You know, or he was a, how do I say this? He was a unarmed combat kind of guy, you know, and that's what he did. You know, and he also fixed TVs and stuff. And
Yeah.
you know, he did a lot of different things in his life, just like the rest of us. We all
Yeah.
do a lot of different things in our life.
Yeah.
But I mean, I did that from probably about 18, 19 till I was like in my early or late 20s. And, you know, then I did like a lot of different jobs. I did cooking and like a lot of the service industry stuff, you know?
Mhm. You've been all over the place. Like,
Yeah. Well, you
like,
know, I did construction here and there. I did service industry. I did bouncing. I was a security guard. You know, a lot of times I did these jobs together. You know,
mhm.
I would work construction all day, and then I'd go work at the bar or at the restaurant at night. You know, that kind of thing.
Well,
You
I
know,
think everyone knows a hardworking guy like you, and like sometimes, like, I mean, a lot of the time when you are a hardworking guy like you, that you're working hard for a reason, and that's to make money, right, and to pay bills and
hmm
all that stuff. And and at that point, you had to work that hard to make ends meet. So, and that's why I want to help you with this mobility scooter, and also that's why I was kind of happy that you said yes to this podcast, because I think that everyone knows a guy like you or a woman like you that works really hard for their life, and well, you're an example that you worked so hard that it
well, you
might have
know,
put you here, right?
my mother and father worked really hard their whole lives, and you know, they kind of instilled that work ethic on all of us. You know, my brother, both my brothers, both my sisters. You know, they all worked and they all still work. You know, well, my parents have passed away by now, but I'm the youngest in the family. But my older brother still works. He actually, you know, he's owned his own business several times. My oldest sister worked her whole life, and she owned her own business several times. My other sister, she's worked her whole life as well. You know, all of us. You know, it's kind of one of those things that, you know, I'm sure there's like 100,000 other families that are very similar to mine. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that everybody in their family worked really, really hard, and you know, either got ahead or they didn't get ahead, or they just kind of hanging on. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, I'd like to attribute the fact that I was the youngest to that. I had a lot of good, really great role models in my
Yeah.
life. You know, my father, my mother, my brothers, my sisters. I mean, they were all instrumental in my life as to, you know, your work ethic and what you should do with your life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And they've never been people to sit back and, you know, as as you know, some people say, like, work the system. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they weren't that, like, we weren't that family. And quite frankly, you know, I think that's actually a major problem in WSIB or disability or anything like that, is they see so many people trying to buck the system or work the system that it becomes everybody's trying to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I've been told that I mean, I think that I was told that, like, or I get a vibe that they think like 95% of people on WSIB are trying to scam the system, and 5% of people are like actually hurt, kind of like people like me. And it's like, but it's like, I think it's the total opposite. I think it's 95% of people that are on WSIB actually need it, and they don't really necessarily want to be there. They're just, that's the system you go to when you get hurt at work, right? Like, no one really
yeah,
wants to be on WSIB, and if you do, you're insane. But
yeah,
I think, like, so, but I do think that it's way like, I think you're right that they think it's a lot. Most people, even though I think you and I know that it's maybe 5% of people that are trying to scam the
yeah,
system, but those 5% paint all the rest of the people as bad
scam,
and scammers,
yeah,
and it's like that's and trust me, I am totally for kicking those people off. I am
yes,
people
so am
that,
I.
because that's like someone trying to scam like Veterans Affairs, for example, where it's, if you're
Yeah,
not a veteran, you don't get Veterans Affairs, and that's just it's as simple as that, So it's, I mean,
yeah,
in some way, and I'm not trying to be mean about it, but it's like it's, and I know that military compared to workers are not the same, but it's stolen valor in some way. Like, you're stealing someone's
benefits.
benefits, and that's
Yeah,
not right. And I think that if you do that, I think you should go to jail for a very long time for that, like, because
I fully agree
it's
with that.
horrible. But
Totally agree.
So we've covered so obviously cover more equipment and allow people that need equipment to get it. Cover medication and not make people pay for medication out of their own pocket when it's related to a workplace injury that they're supposed to pay for. And then obviously humanize WSIB. Was there anything else that you wanted to say that you wanted to improve?
Yeah. The one thing I would say that I want to improve is getting the information should be easier.
Yeah.
It should be laid out in a fashion that is very easy to traverse, and they shouldn't be hiding stuff because, I mean, for me, like hiding the fact that they said that they didn't hide it, but I mean, for them to tell me where to go to look for it, that, they don't pay for opiates, I never would have found it on my own.
No.
I'm not
that website isn't like, and I remember I told Jeff this the first day I met him. Like, I was like, your website sucks. Like, it is the worst website I've ever seen in my life. Like, it's so confusing. I mean, honestly, like, I was on WSIB for 4 years, and I don't think I ever sent any of my claims in over online. I sent it by fax because every time I tried to do it online, it never worked. So, and what really, and I don't know if have they improved the worker side of it at all?
No.
It really bothers me that, and I understand that employers pay for WSIB, but what really bothers me is it's not for employers, it's for workers. That's why you have the big W in the front of your name, WSIB, Workers Safety Insurance Board. It's not the ESIB. Why are we improving one side for the employers to make it easier for them to do claims, and why aren't we doing it for the people that use it every day or use it more than employers? Like, that should be something that should absolutely be improved, and I think it's absolutely shameful that they haven't improved it yet, considering that I spoke to Jeff in 2023 and I told him this, and there's nothing that's been done. So that's very as you can see, I'm very frustrated by that. I think it's disgusting. And
again, I fully agree with that, because with me, it felt like they were hiding things.
Yep.
And it felt like if you're not smart enough to navigate it because we can, well, if you already know the route to the store, are you going to get mad at somebody or tell them that person is stupid if they don't know the route to the store and they just moved to the area?
Yeah. Oh.
No, you're going to show them. You're going to say, hey, this is how you get to the store and stuff,
Yeah. And
so,
you know what? Like, I that's going to be another claim I make, and I will follow through with it because I'm a man of my word. I am going to work on getting WSI information more accessible for workers and for your average people, and that will be on my website. It might take me a long time to collect it all because there's so much of it, but I will actually organize it the way it should be. And when you want to know something about WSIB, come to my website, and if it's not posted, just call me or email me or whatever, and I'll figure it out for you. Because I think it's the fact that you had to go on like a treasure hunt for a piece of paper saying that we don't. Oh, and that's the other thing too, is that like you thought that maybe it would say, "Oh yeah, we're going to cover this, man." Like, you were disappointed by that. Like, cause they said they wouldn't cover it. And it's like, so I've just spent all this money that I can't afford, So, and I mean, I've gone through that same medication problem. Like, I remember, and to be fair, the medication that I was supposed to take, it was a newer medication. It had just come out. So I'm not really overly upset at WSIB for not having it on the list. But again, I think the policy should be as simple as, if it's work related, it should be covered, and there should be no argument towards that. But there was a medication that I was supposed to take I have headaches all the time, like every day. Right now I have a headache, but there's some days I have headaches that are super bad, and it basically just puts me out for the day. And so I went to the pharmacy because my non-WSIB neurologist, my OHIP neurologist, said, well, if these are working, then we'll just roll with these, and every time you have a bad day when it comes to head pain, just take one and you'll be fine. And I'm like, that sounds fantastic. I find out that 8 of these tablets are $120, and it's like, I'm not paying for that. Exactly. I mean, I've lived I've lived with it now. Like, I can just live with the pain now, and I'm just not going to pay for it. So it's just, and that's, I think Canadians deserve better than that, and workers deserve better than that. And yeah,
Well,
So
people in general deserve better than
yeah,
that. And one of the things I think is terrible is that WSIB is allowing um, employers to bring in foreign workers, and the government's allowing it too. And then when
I
these
don't
people
even.
get injured, what happens is to them? Do they get all the benefits we do? No, they end up getting shipped back home where
Yeah.
there's absolutely no benefits and no recourse for them. And all they did was they wanted to come somewhere where they were going to get a better life,
Yeah.
and they ended up injured. And oh well, you know what? You can't work, so we're going to send you back to where you came from.
Yeah. Like, I mean, realistically, those, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, it might be a hot take, and I know people disagree with this absolutely, but I don't think those people should be allowed to come here and work. And that's, like, if you're in school, I get that you have to work, and they've done the whole 20-hour thing of working,
Yeah.
but personally, like, if you're not a citizen, I don't think you should be allowed to work in Canada. Like, it's just not, like, to me, that doesn't,
No,
or if you have, like, if you have a reason to be here, so, like, let's say you have a student visa, and it's not expired, you should be able to work. but like, you should have to have documentation, whether that's a passport and a Canadian citizenship or documentation saying that you can be here and work. You should have that, right? And like, I've worked with foreign workers before. They got work visas. They were allowed to come here and do their thing, and then they went home and they were done, right? But
yeah,
it's kind of gotten out of control, and we've just allowed
it has
everyone to
gotten
come
out of
here,
control.
and I don't know what we're doing, but we're not doing something right. That's a whole nother topic to get into, though.
Yeah.
so
It is a whole nother topic.
it's a
and
very
I'm
broad
sure
topic to get into, and it makes
and
me
I'm sure we're
mad.
going to get into it.
Yeah.
Probably not today, but
I mean, I saw out west. My dad was telling me this, actually. I didn't even hear about this, but out west in Alberta, the Ministry of Labor out there, or whatever they call it out there, shut down a residential, like, housing development because there wasn't a single Canadian working on the job site. And it's like,
Yeah.
what are we doing? How do we miss that? Like, and how does that even get started without documentation being shown and proved? Like, it's just like, it shakes your bones, like, to how mad it makes me when it comes to that kind of stuff. But
it's the kind of thing that you say that a police officer is not going to stop you for no reason. Well, you know what? It happens.
Yeah.
These things happen. Somebody might be having a bad day, and they do something really stupid, and it just kind of snowballs.
yeah.
And then by the time you finally look at it, it's like, how the heck did we miss that?
No, and that's kind of my, like, I mean, I totally agree with that. Like, it's like, I feel that there's people that work in our governments and our systems that are supposed to do a good job, and I don't feel that there's very many of them that are working correctly, if they're working at all. Like, I mean,
one of the things that I noticed through my journey through WSIB is that I didn't have a single worker who had a Canadian name. Not one. Every worker I had was, their name was like an alphabet and a half long or whatever, and I couldn't pronounce their names half the time, and I couldn't understand what they were saying half the time.
Well,
so
I mean, they don't. WSIB workers don't even have names anymore. Like, did you hear about this?
No, what?
So because of that shooting of that CEO down in New York or whatever, or at least I think this is the response to it. They haven't actually come out and said anything because they never do. But this is what I think it's about. Is because of that shooting, they think that they have to protect workers, which I'm okay with. I don't think WSIB workers should get hurt for, working there. Like, they don't control the policies and stuff like that. They just work every day, And I will say that I do think that there are a lot of policies at WSIB that limit the workers to do what they can do or what they should be doing. But apparently they've come out with a new policy saying that, so you can know, as a worker, you can know their first name, but they don't have a last name apparently. Apparently they now have a barcode that says that it's like basically an employee number, and so that's how they introduce themselves to you. And it's like, how are workers supposed to relate to that at all? Like, how are you supposed to get to know a barcode? Like,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
how does that work? Like, I mean, it's just, to me, it's not a good response. Like, to me, like,
My first back to work specialist that I had, he was a Canadian guy, and he had said to me, he goes, okay, so you've got this thing, it's Crips. He goes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you on a work training program. He goes, for a year, and he kept stressing that, for a year. And he goes, and you should do what you need to do, like, probably go to ODSP and get the thing started, because it takes a year. And he kept stressing the whole year thing. And it wasn't until later that I realized what he was trying to say was, we're not going to help you after that year. So you better have something else set up.
that's awful. Like, that's horrible, man. Like, I mean, like,
And but the thing was, he kept stressing, you have a year, you got to go do this thing. And when it started, it was all through COVID. So you couldn't go to class.
No, and you couldn't. I mean, honestly, no one would, like, none of the people that worked in government were even at work. Like, they were all hanging at home. I mean, they still are. Like, I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, I was just actually, like, and I know we're kind of getting off topic here. We're not really talking about workplace injuries, but like the other day, I was. So obviously, that I'm setting up this business, and I'm working on things, and some things are new to me, and I'm still learning. But like, I called CRA is obviously our revenue agency, which basically collects taxes that are arguably deserved or not. I'm not going to comment on that. And I called them. I've called them 4 times now. 3 of those times I sat on the phone for 3 hours each, so 9 hours, and no one picked up the phone. So I'm just like, all right. And then the 4th time, I called the personal Revenue Canada, not the business Revenue Canada. So then, and like, I was getting yelled at, and it's like, you work for me, man. Like, why are you talking to me like this? Like, and
Exactly.
it's like, I'm literally trying to give you my money. Like, so why are you talking to me like this? And it's just, I'm just like, this is who we have, and then to think that there's been more people hired there, it's just like, how? like we need to get rid of people, because if that's the way they talk to the people that give them a leg to stand on, money, why are they speaking to me like this? And that's the same thing for, like, I mean, I think I read a while ago about, like, passports and stuff, where if you want to get a passport, I think back before our current federal government was a government, there was only 2 people that would check your passport and, like, check your background. Now there's 7, and it takes longer to get your passport than it did before. And it's like, how does that make sense? Like, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't add up. Like, if there's more people checking backgrounds and stuff, you should get your passport faster, in my opinion. Like,
yeah, you should get it faster, and it should be, it should be expedited much quicker. And ultimately, that's the problem.
And I think
I'm going to say this,
yeah.
and I'm going to say this, and I can say this. I am part Native. There's too many chiefs, not enough Indians.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the major problem, is that our governments have gotten way too big, and our departments have gotten way too big when they never needed to be that. And I think it's time to maybe downsize and let go of some people, because that money can go back to Canadians or Ontarians, or on whatever level. I think, and I do think that's both federally and provincially. I think our provincial government's too big too. So.
Yeah. And one of the things I found was, when I began my journey through WSIB and everything, is I would call somebody for, let's say, the medication part of it.
Yep.
And ultimately I would get through, it might take an hour or maybe more, but then it would be like, oh no, that's not us, that's this organization. So you'd get on the phone, you'd call them, and they'd say, well, oh no, that's not us, that's the guys you just spoke to. Well, who is it? Is it them doing it? Is it you doing it? And why can't I get a straight answer out of either of you?
Well, I mean, I remember when me and Jeff first started talking, and I shared that peer support idea with him, and I remember him thinking it was such a good idea, which it is. And he told me that they already have one in place. Like, it's called the IWS, the Injured Worker Outreach Service. So,
Yeah.
hear that name. Outreach. Focus on that for a minute.
Yeah. Which means that they should call you.
They should call you and say, "Hey, man, what's going on?" like.
I didn't even hear of that service until you had mentioned it to me. I think it was like,
Yeah,
you know,
they're not
around
allowed.
the first time we met.
WSIB employees aren't allowed to share the workers' information with this outreach service. Outreach, not reach out. You reach out, like you as the worker reach out. So you as the worker has to reach out to them, and it's like, well, if no one tells me about this outreach service, then how am I supposed to even know about it? And then to know that in 2020, I think it was 2022 or 2023, that they only helped 6 people and probably millions of dollars are going to that program for them to basically do nothing. And we have workers that are on the street that can't afford to pay for an apartment or anything. That's disgusting, and that needs to change, and I'm glad it's changing. I don't know how the new peer support's going to go, but I'm glad if it's in-house and they can reach out to people, that's a step in the right direction.
If they would hire me to work with the outreach program, I would call every day, all day people, and I would say, hey, you know what? How are you doing? Are you okay? Is there something we can do to help you? You know, do you need help navigating the website? Do you need help doing this? Do you need help doing that? You know, and I would do that all day.
Well, and think about how that would have helped you in your situation where
it would have. It would have helped me great. I felt like I was all alone.
For your opioid situation, because you had to wait months to get that sorted out. If you had somebody to reach out to and ask, they would have helped you. And then you would have been like, all right, I'm on my own. Or we need to figure out a new situation. You know?
It was like 2 years before they finally broke down and said, okay, no, we don't cover it. Instead of just saying from the get-go, we don't cover that.
Yeah. And it's like... And then
they just kept telling me, send it in. And when I would send it in, it would come back denied. And they wouldn't tell me why it was denied. They would give me some bogus reason of you didn't fill it out correctly.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it seems like the mobility scooter thing. It's like I remember talking to a worker, I think it was just before you actually, and he was telling me that he hit his head. He was really messed up, couldn't walk, and his physiotherapist didn't want him going to a gym because if something happens, no one would know what to do or what happened to him. Which makes sense. That makes sense. So he wanted WSIB to pay for I think it was a exercise bike, I want to say, and WSIB what's that?
I remember. Yeah, I remember you telling me about this.
WSIB wouldn't pay for it because it wasn't on the exercise equipment list, and it's like, so. Well, how hard is it to add that to the list? Like, just put exercise bike. Like, I mean that takes 5 seconds. Like, they could probably type it faster than me, and it's like they don't want to do that because they don't want to spend the money on it, and. But they would offer him then the second part of that is they would buy him a treadmill because it was on the list, and it's like a treadmill costs more than an exercise bike. Mm-hmm. That makes no sense. Like, why is there even a list? It's just
frankly, I've learned going through this,
it hurts your brain, man.
I've learned going through this that anything that does not make sense, that's what they're going to do. Anything that does make sense, they're not going to do.
And that's a part of the reason why I didn't want to work there is because it's just like, I would say things that would make, like that peer support thing. Like, that wasn't really that good of an idea. I didn't even think of that idea. I went on, I think it was Tunnels for Towers, which is like a organization for like 9/11 victims and like firefighters and stuff like that. It's a massive organization for that kind of stuff, and they have a peer support. And I was looking at it and I was like, well, that would be a good idea for WSIB. And so I didn't even think of it. I just wanted to do a website, and it was like I came up with a $1 million idea when I told Jeff about that, and it's like, man, like, this isn't hard. Like, there's a lot of ideas I haven't even thought of. I just took them from somebody else. Like, you know.
It doesn't matter where a good idea comes from as long as it gets implemented, and that's the trick, right? You got to be able to get it implemented and
properly too. Like, I mean, you can implement it, but you got to properly do it too.
I mean, first, you got to get it implemented, and we'll get to the properly later. But I mean, one of the things that I said was like, not everybody is a computer savvy as,
No.
our youth today.
No.
So putting all this stuff in a format that people like me don't really access is useless.
Oh,
It's
for
completely useless. And then to put it in a format that is so complicated that you have to have a computer engineering degree to even get through it is even more useless.
Mm-hmm.
You're spending all this money on a thing that's supposed to make everybody's life easier, and you're lucky if it makes
If it even does anything, yeah.
you're lucky if it even does anything, let alone make even a third of the people an easier time. Yeah. And I'm not going to say that everybody's like me, computer illiterate and everything, but I mean a lot of our seniors that are in this situation, they're the guys that they broke their back doing physical labor. They never had the time to go and learn computers and stuff.
Nope.
And
well,
now,
I mean, some people's work didn't allow them to. Like, it was just,
no.
It was all labor intensive. And, I mean, you think about construction. Like, I mean, I know a lot of, I mean, I'm, like, I know I don't look computer illiterate on camera here because I got this cool microphone and shit, but, like, I am. Like, I'm an idiot when it comes to computers. Like, I had to call, like, I have an editor to edit this, and, like, he had to show me how to, like, press the record button. So it's like, like, I'm not, like, and I'm 26 now, right? So it's just like, I can turn on a light and I can turn on my computer and I can do things, but I'm not, like, you ask me to build a computer, I wouldn't even know where to start. Like, so, or even press a record button.
Right? Everybody's got their skills and everything, and most of our seniors, and I'm going to go out here on a limb and say I'm a senior. I'm 53 or 52 and going on 53. And I mean, and this wasn't something that I did as a kid. I mean, I was out, working on the farms, doing physical labor all the time, and I thought that was going to be my life. And here I am, at 52, and it's like, oh no, you injured yourself so bad that you just can't do it anymore. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to punish you for it.
Yeah, you would have been born in what, like 67 to 70-ish?
72.
72? Okay. So yeah, and I mean, computer, like, I mean, I don't know, because I wasn't around, but like, computers
it was coming out.
Yeah.
I mean, it was coming out when I was a kid, and I went to school, typing class and computer class. And I mean, I just barely got through typing class in high school. I just barely got through computer class in high school. And once I was through it, I never went back, Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I play video games and stuff, because, I had two boys. Yeah. And of course, they wanted to play video games. And hey, Dad, come play with us. And everything I know about video games, I learned from my sons. Yeah.
What can I ask? What, like, just, I know this is a random question. We've gotten definitely off topic here, but we're already there, so we might as well just continue. What's your favorite video game out of all of them?
Actually, my son and I, we really loved Left 4 Dead.
Really? Okay. Yeah, Left 4 Dead's a good game. Yeah.
I have been a horror movie kind of guy my whole life, and zombies have always been one of my favorites. So yeah, The Walking Dead, Left 4 Dead, Z Nation, that kind of thing. Him and I really we really bonded over it.
Yeah.
Him and I would play it and, try to top each other's top scores, for everything. And to this day, he'll ask me, he's like, hey, Dad, do you think you want to play Left 4 Dead? He'll call me up, from his house, and he'll be like, hey, Dad, you want to play a game of Left 4 Dead? Mom says you're not feeling too well,
mm-hmm.
So I'll sit there and, we'll play it on the Xbox or whatever for, half an hour.
Yeah.
Because I can't really play it as much as I used to. Yeah. My left hand doesn't work as well, so trying to work the controller is a little bit more difficult than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kicking my ass now.
He's just gotten better at it, right? So
yeah, he just keeps getting better. I just keep losing mobility in my left hand. So if somebody could figure out a way I could play that game, strictly right-handed, I'd be golden.
You'd kill it, yeah. I mean, I think that's all I have for you. And I appreciate big time for you being the first guest. I think this is going to be a really good thing. I don't know how popular it's going to get, but I think this is going to be a solid thing and a solid foundation to start to maybe
Well,
help
you know,
improve.
Jacob, I'd love to see you do a live show where people could call in and you and I could talk to them and answer questions
Yeah.
based on our experience. I'd love to have that.
Sorry, I'm just, if you see me like writing things down or doing something down here, I'm just writing things down. So,
Are you feeling another idea there, Jeff
yeah,
or Jake?
yep, live show. I thought about live. Man, I don't know how to spell live. Apparently, I just spelled it. I said life show. What was the other thing that I was gonna write? Oh, and I just need to write down that mobility scooter thing as well. So,
All right.
yeah. I appreciate your time though, and I think that your story will hit home for folks that at one point you were a regular guy and you had something pretty bad happen to you, and it shows that really it can happen to anybody. And I think that is kind of the main point of this podcast, is to show people that no one's invincible. Like,
Yeah.
you can have something crazy like me, or do something
Simple.
basic and simple and end up in the same spot that someone like I did, so it doesn't matter what happens, and I mean, I'm sure when you lifted that box, you weren't thinking anything of it. You were just thinking it like it was a normal day, and
To
it
be
wasn't.
honest with you, I was thinking it's 10 minutes till break. I need a smoke and a coffee.
That's so interesting. Before we end that, I want to share mine because I relate to that so much. I remember and I haven't shared this with really a lot of people because, one, no one's really asked about it or really brought it up, but I want to share this about my experience when it comes to my injury, that me and you were, that whole break thing was actually funny because, like, when I got hurt, I was like maybe 10 minutes away from a break. Like, and I had been beating the hell out of myself, just jackhammering the floor out. And I remember a guy, I don't know who he was, and I don't even know what trade he was, but I think he was an HVAC guy. And he walked by and he's like, buddy, you've been like killing yourself doing that shit. Like, go take a break, man. And I was like, I was trying to be the good worker and be like, you know what, I will work till break and then I'll go for lunch. And then the building collapsed. And it's like, fuck, if I had left the building that minute when he said, go take a break, I would have been, me and you probably wouldn't be here talking. Like, so, I relate to that a lot, that it's, like, and I can tell you one thing: when someone tells me to take a break, I will never not argue with them ever again. Like, so
that is the way to go.
Yeah. So
that's the difference between guys working and women working, because women working, they're thinking things like, oh, that's a nice outfit that girl's wearing. I have to do this, I have to do that. Men are thinking it's 10 minutes till break and I need a coffee and a smoke.
Yeah, I don't smoke, but I've never been able to handle cigarettes. I don't know why, but it's but I do get what you're saying. It would have been that. It's interesting. I don't know. I just find it interesting that you and I can kind of relate on that level, even though it's something small. It's it's.
So one thing, Jake, I'd like to say before we go.
Yeah.
Don't ever not get involved. If people have the attitude where it's not me, so I don't care, eventually it's going to be you, or it's going to be somebody you love, and then you're really going to care, and then you're not going to be able to do anything about it, because at that time it's too late.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's, I haven't said it, but I think that's a good way to go out, and I think that's another message for my podcast to be, is that, like, I felt that there wasn't really being enough done with this topic or this group of people, and I feel that this group of people are kind of being cheated in some way and not being treated the way they should be, and especially when we have someone saying that they're working for workers, and I don't really feel that way. And that's get involved. Like, if you feel like you can make a change to something, then do it.
Exactly.
And because I mean, every inch counts, right? Like, I mean, and that's I guess that's a good way of looking at it. Is it's kind of like a football game. Is that to get to that other end zone, it's a game of inches, man, and that's kind of what we're doing here is grinding this out, and hopefully that this podcast will be a big help for the injured worker community and also the public to make sure that when another person gets hurt, which is impossible to stop, that they're treated correctly and that they are taken care of. And that's kind of the goal of this. So, yeah. So I thank you for coming on today and sharing your story and sharing your experience and just talking about whatever the hell we talked about. And maybe we can have you on another time to maybe see if anything has changed or, improved by any means. And I will get that mobility scooter GoFundMe up and see what we can do with that. So,
all right, Jacob. Yeah. You have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one.
Hey everyone, so this is my outro video for the podcast. So basically every episode I'm going to do like an outro and basically just like highlight the main points of the podcast, just to, if you don't want to listen to the full thing and you just want to hear like the basic parts of it, then I'll just do that. I'm also going to cut down like on YouTube and stuff. Like I'm going to cut it down into like sections of like, all right, this is the intro, this is the outro. I'll put the post-production things in like chapters basically on YouTube. So basically the highlights of this episode with Scott, basically what we covered was his injury and kind of what happened. Really the general overall point of this episode was to humanize WSIB and maybe help them understand like what it's like to be an injured worker in some way and how we don't feel supported and how we do feel supported and things like that. So the main highlights were their medication coverage plan for injured workers. It's not great. Like it could be improved majorly. Like not covering certain medications when those medications are related to our workplace injuries. It's just like we shouldn't have to pay for that out of our pocket, especially when WSIB kind of doesn't allow you to have a amazing income, The next point was the website, for example. Like the website, it was improved for the employers, but it wasn't improved for the worker side of it. And it's like when the worker is the one using it all the time and trying to send claims in and things like that, it's like, why aren't we improving that for them? I spent 4 years on WSIB, and I tried to use the website every time I had like a travel claim or an equipment claim or whatever you want to say. Never managed to work for me ever, and that was 4 years. I talked to Jeff, the CEO of WSIB, on March 10th or March 14th of 2023 about the website not being very good. It improved for the employer side, but didn't improve for the worker side, and I think that's like if you're going to improve one side, why not just improve the other, Especially when you're a $34 billion company that shouldn't have an excuse for not having a good website. And then the other thing about the website too is that trying to find information on anything is good luck. It's a needle in a haystack situation. So I think it needs to be more organized, and it just actually needs to like function properly for people. So that was one of the highlights. And then the other highlight was mobility and exercise equipment. So I'll get into so Scott needs like a scooter to basically get around, and they wouldn't even entertain that. They offered him a wheelchair, like just a basic wheelchair that you have to push yourself kind of deal. He has no use really of his left arm, so how is he supposed to push himself around with only one arm basically? And it's just like there's a lot of things when it comes to their equipment policy that just doesn't make sense. Like, I mean, I had a worker reach out to me a while ago and said that, that my physiotherapist requested an exercise bike at home to help him kind of rebuild his stamina again and things like that. And his physiotherapist didn't want him going to like a public gym by himself, because if something happened with his brain injury and he passed out, let's say, or something like that, no one would really know what to do or what was going on, and that's not good, right? So I don't really understand why there isn't, like they have these lists, but the lists don't really make sense because, again, for example, with that last story that I just said, that they would pay for a treadmill, which was like, I can't remember how much it was, but it was a lot of money. It was way more than an exercise bike, and it's like they wouldn't pay for an exercise bike because it wasn't on the list. And it's like, how hard is it to take exercise bike and put it on a list and just cover it? So those were the main points. Basically just humanize WSIB and improve things where you can, especially when those things have been brought up in the past and you have the power to change those things or bring a new policy or put it on the list or whatever you want to say. Like, just, it's not hard to do. And especially when it's been brought up, like, I get if you've never heard of it or thought of the idea, but when you've been given the idea and then you don't do anything about it, that sucks. So yeah, so basically those were the main highlights. Like I said in the post-production part of the video, Scott's fundraiser or GoFundMe will be in the description below. My links will be in the below. And yeah, so like if you want to check out my website or social medias or even my Spotify playlist, if you're looking for some good tunes, like that's, you can check it out in my links page. For this podcast and all the other podcasts, we're going to be on YouTube, Spotify, Rumble. I'm working on Apple. I'm not sure if Google Play or whatever the Google version of Apple is, but I'm going to try to get on those two. I haven't really figured it out yet. Kind of complicated, but I am working on it. But the main three we'll be on is Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Again, all those links are in my link. So, yeah. So thanks for watching. Appreciate you taking the time to hear all the things I've said and what Scott wanted to share and things like that. Like I said, I'll be posting this every Monday. And if you guys could please, like, subscribe, and share with friends and other people. And yeah, I would greatly appreciate it. So yeah, I'll see you next Monday, and you guys have a good week and stay safe. Hey everyone, it's post-production Jake here. So during the episode, Scott brought up the scooter he was like looking to get from WSIB, and we were talking about it. And during the episode, I had so many things on my mind because it was the first time doing it. I thought maybe I'd do like a post-production thing just to show everyone what we were talking about. So basically, this is it here. So the price is $7,700, and this is what it kind of looks like, kind of interior. Yeah, so it's basically just a enclosed scooter, basically just to help get Scott around and not have to totally rely on another person kind of deal. So I thought this would kind of be the right thing to do. So I will have a GoFundMe in the description below. Any amount counts, even if it's something like 25 cents, we're cool with that. So just, so I would appreciate it if you donate. If you don't donate, it's all good. Yeah, so I just thought I'd show it off, kind of show people what we're talking about. I'll also put the link to the geomobility.ca website on here or in the description as well, just so you can have easy access to it and see what me and him were talking about and basically what he was looking to get from WSIB that they apparently wouldn't entertain. So yeah, but I appreciate you listening. I'll get back to the episode. Thank you. See you later.